Disregarding boundaries causes conflict, apprehension, feelings of mistrust, and it kills intimacy and the ability to feel okay with being vulnerable. Toxic people will continue to tiptoe around the periphery of your boundaries, testing you if you're sure, if you'll bend, if you'll accommodate them. Difficult or toxic people tend to be abusive, manipulative, controlling, and/or irresponsible. Toxic people might say all the right things, but you learn not to trust their words because you see what they do. We all have different types of boundaries, and even though many of us, especially coming from dysfunctional families, may not consciously be aware that we have emotional boundaries, intellectual boundaries, spiritual, physical boundaries, even though we may not precisely know what that means, the way you can tell whether your boundary has been violated is by the way you feel. So here are some ways that you're able to tell when someone has overstepped one of your boundaries. When someone intrudes on your boundary, maybe unknowingly or innocently, you may initially feel a little bit annoyed and irritated. So initially you will start to feel a sense of discomfort and awkwardness, like you need to somehow protect yourself from this person or from what is about to come out of their mouth. So some of these behaviors may seem really subtle and we tend to disregard them at first. But that sense of discomfort just doesn't seem to go away. And that is the way you can tell that your boundaries are being violated or they're about to be violated. People with unhealthy boundaries will usually be unaware that they have violated someone else's boundary. And people with weak or porous boundaries may constantly intrude or infringe upon the boundaries of others. So they will invade your space, be intrusive, violate your privacy, or be indiscriminate about spewing their emotions. So the most obvious one is when someone has no respect for your time boundaries. So they will repeatedly show up late, or perhaps tell you that they'll call or they'll do something, but then they don't. And if these are just random and isolated incidents, then there's no need to be alarmed. It just means that perhaps it's a good opportunity to define your boundaries with that person and let them know your preferences. However, if these boundary intrusions and violations happen regularly and consistently, and especially after you have confronted this person, then this is evidence of a toxic relationship. So what I'm talking about in this video is a pattern of behavior that is pervasive. Other signs of having no consideration for your boundaries include going through your personal belongings, not asking permission, and then denying that it ever happened. Toxic people seem to have a tendency of telling you what you should or should not be feeling, thinking, or believing. And our feelings of awkwardness indicate that one of our internal boundaries has been violated. How we feel and what we choose to believe is such an intimate and personal matter. So when someone ventures into this territory, it's no surprise that we do feel violated, and especially if it's done in an abrupt and entitled manner. Other toxic signs include acting as if they have the right to describe your reality or your experience, using fear, guilt, or shaming to intimidate you into making a decision that usually suits them. Making decisions on your behalf without consulting you is definitely a red flag. And you'll know your emotional boundaries are violated when you absorb other people's emotions and you are not allowed to experience your own. And I think it's an important realization to make is that when someone chooses to violate one of your boundaries, especially if you've brought them up on it, they are choosing to put your relationship in jeopardy. When our integrity is threatened, we instantly know what that feels like. It's like our walls just instantly go up around these people. And toxic people will often see how far they can push you, and it's rarely done out of ignorance. Because even though when you confront them, they will deny it and will pretend that they didn't know. They may also get really defensive, like they have a right to violate one of your boundaries, and they'll tell you how you should be feeling about that. People who repeatedly infringe on your boundaries usually continue to do so because nobody has told them about how inappropriate their behaviour is. So let your no mean no. Protect your resources, which is your time and your energy, and choose wisely with whom you associate with, because relationships can either empower you or deplete you. Toxic people will always somehow forget that they did something inappropriate that hurt your feelings, and they'll constantly need reminders. And this is why relationships with toxic people become extremely exhausting. So when discussing your boundaries with another person, be really self-aware. So that means knowing exactly what your deal breakers are. Be really clear about your needs, and also be specific and direct. Learn the difference between giving someone a second chance and turning a blind eye to abusive behaviour. Because the more chances that you give people, the less they will respect you. Don't allow them to get comfortable with you constantly forgiving them. And don't extend the benefit of the doubt to people who have demonstrated that they are untrustworthy. Because if you do that, you are leaving yourself vulnerable to being abused. So know the difference between an apology and actually making amends. And remember that boundaries allow us to take better care of ourselves. Boundaries promote equality, they preserve intimacy, and they prevent others from taking advantage of you. And in the next video, I'm really keen to share with you a second red flag that's really important for us to recognize, because it can be slowly poisoning our relationships. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below if this topic resonated for you and whether this area still is a challenge for you.